All right. Got your discussions? Got your questions? Do you have opinions? I know you have opinions.
I might have a lot of opinions.
That is very true. Okay. All right, we've got our accountable talk in front of us, and I need one more person. Oh, Titus switched out. I need one more. I need 7. Would you go with one? Thank you, ma'am. All right, now I got my clipboard. So as you say something, I will check you off. You will get your points for the discussion, and out you go.
So are we doing these questions in order?
Yes, we're going to do them in order. All right, so let's look at our first question. Our first question is, how successful was the New Deal in pulling America out of the Great Depression? Which one of you guys would like to open up?
I'll go first.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Artie.
Okay. So the New Deal actually, it was somewhat successful, but not very successful. Well, for one, because Roosevelt, he was one of the members of the New York wealthy class, and he really didn't know what it was like to be poor or anything. And plus, they said he wasn't a very revolutionary socialist. And then also the AAA, it's like the whole Agriculture Act. It helped people and everything who were like didn't have food to eat and stuff like that, but then it also took away money from the farmers. It ended up messing up their soil, and also took away like their animals and things, so they were having a hard time living just because other people were having a hard time living too, so it wasn't very equal, so it didn't really help much. Diana, how do you feel about the New Deal?
So after the New Deal had been presented and President Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected, he had presented these acts like the WPA Act or the CWA of 1983. He had promised so many things for them, but like Brett Pearson said, he didn't fulfill his duties. Therefore, that Republican didn't really make anything. President D. Roosevelt had spent $3 billion on the WPA project, which in the long run didn't give anybody jobs, and it just gave people a sense of sustainability.
Hi, what's your opinion?
I feel like the New Deal was pretty successful, but it didn't really take America out of the Great Depression. It like helped it towards living towards it, like throughout all the deals that FDR made with all his help from Harry Hopkins to oversee the FERA, how he worked to help the Works Progress Administration to help people get more jobs. They made it more able for people in America to, like, instead of thinking of it as like it was a Great Depression, they still had jobs and they still were able to live in it, and yeah.
I agree with what you're saying, which is that the New Deal didn't necessarily help the Great Depression, but it just made it like able to cope with and live throughout the stage of the Great Depression. And the New Deal was also very contradictory because like one of the acts said that the PWA created new farmlands by creating irrigation control and vast new arable land. But then on the other side, the AA was paying farmers not to farm and raising crop prices. And, yeah.
I want to hit pause for a second. I'd like to remind you, if you are in the outside of the fishbowl, make sure you are filling in your note taker as you are listening to those on the inside. If you are on the outside of the fishbowl, I'd like to remind you to make sure that you are filling in your note taker at the same time. All right, Miss Williams, what's your opinion?
My opinion, honestly, I think that it was like successful, but at the same time it wasn't successful. And my reasoning for that is in Chris Mullins' like what is this? Perspective. He claims that it was because of Roosevelt's policies that the U.S. economy was ready not only to recover completely, but it also met international demands for industrial war goods. And he supports that with like giving different acts of how he helped the people in the community and internationally. So yeah, that's how I feel.
I want to agree with you because it was successful, but it did have its downfalls, like the AAA, because it would attack all the farmers, and there were people around the world who didn't have food and were hungry, but we're just throwing away all this stuff. But then, like, Social Security it's still used today, which was a really good benefit of Roosevelt's New Deal. So.
I agree with all of you because the New Deal was 50-50, and because it reformed measures of banking reform and the regulation of the stock market through securities. It exchange act were aimed at creating a safer economic and stable business environment. So it did stable it, but it didn't really help. So it was more.
All right, do we have any final thoughts on this?
Well, I believe that the New Deal was somewhat successful, but not always entirely successful. For instance, it was partly successful by the Insurance Corporation and the Security and Exchange Commission that guaranteed $150,000 of secured savings. But it secured savings to the working class, but how many people were actually working by the end of World War II? So there were still millions of people out of work by then. No one was working.
Okay, so Miss Washington definitely wants to go to the second question. What I'd like you guys to do right now is on your note taker, please finalize any answer. We're going to close question 1 for right now. We're going to close question 1. I know some of you guys are really waiting for the last 2 questions. Make sure that you have a rebuttal. If someone disagrees with you, make sure you have a rebuttal to support your claim. It is okay to have a rebuttal. It's okay to disagree. It makes it more interesting. It shows me what you know. I want to know what you know. All right, is everyone to the second question? Easy. Yeah, you're good? You gonna be good? No?
Okay, gonna start?
Yes, if you want to open us up. All right, Ms. Washington, let's start with the second question. So our second question is discussing the failures of the New Deal.
Okay, some of the failures were for example, one New Deal was the National Recovery Administration. It's for people to, to force a corporation between labor and management through price and working condition codes, but it didn't actually succeed because it was a lot of people who were being fired, and it sparked over to 1,800 strikes in 1934, and some workers worked off the job. But the New Deal is supposed to help the unemployment, right? I remember it being people who are unemployed should have a job, and that just didn't go right.
Let's vote. What do you think?
I agree with Ms. Washington. Some of the failures of the New Deal was it didn't completely employ a lot of the people that needed such employment at the time, because the New Deal, it didn't so much as really solve the Great Depression. It sort of helped it out, but not in a way to fix the whole economy. And it sort of revolutionized it instead of completely solving the entire problem of what was needed to be solved.
Okay, well, what do you think needed to be added?
What needs to be added to the New Deal? Like,
Focus more on fixing the economy.
yes,
instead
they
of-
could have focused more on fixing the economy instead of just trying to.
Hey, talk to your friends.
Instead of just trying to employ more people.
Right, because they left the economy $50 billion or $20 billion into debt.
What do you think?
I think one of the failures of the New Deal was the Agricultural Adjustment Act. And even though it relieved economic emergencies by increasing agriculture purchasing powers, it did reduce the production and it paid farmers subsidies, but it more of just wasted.
I would like to agree with Vivi because it did nothing for the tenant farmers and the sharecroppers, and the Supreme Court declared that it was unconstitutional.
I agree also because it led to like further unemployment. Yeah.
Could you expand upon the unconstitutionality of it?
Okay, I gotta go all the way back in the
Okay, go all the way back.
perspective.
Which dilemma are you using?
Perspective too.
Perspective 2? Okay, why don't you, Ms. Washington is turning to perspective 2 to find some more evidence. Why don't you guys turn to perspective 2 so you can see where she's looking at.
Evidence of the failure.
Ms. Washington, where can you give them more direction?
Well, where I found this information it was in the book that we use for AP history. So sorry, you guys.
Remember, you've got your fish food, so if there's something you want to add to someone to give them some food for thought, go ahead and give it to them.
It says,
Let's see. Would you like some assistance?
I don't know.
Okay.
It prevented workers from finding sustainable employment that would have advanced the economy.
All right, so fish in the middle right now. Give me a thumbs up if you think, for question number 2, that it was a failure. Or a thumbs down that you think that the New Deal was a success. So thumbs up that you agree that it was a failure, and thumb down if you disagree and think it was a
It's
success.
in the middle.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of hard to tell because there's some things that were successful that actually did help America get back on its feet. But it also left it in a bad state.
Left in the basket. Keep on in. Now, give some
Yeah,
clarification.
like for example, for the Works Progress Administration, it helped build roads, bridges, and schools. It also funded projects for artists and writers and young people. So
But yeah,
there
were
are
several
some.
things that did get into
Yeah.
it, but other things that didn't really help out so well. Spent more money in the economy and getting it more into debt, but still helping America and like its civilians and social society to like overcome the hard times, but it still didn't solve the Great Depression at all.
Okay.
And like, I agree with you too because I read somewhere.
Well, just I was looking, I believe, well, I believe on one hand that the New Deal was successful because, for one case, New Deal was successful for saving Americans' capitalistic system from socialism. It made Americans know the government was like at least trying to help them. Like, yeah. And then on the other hand, it's a failure because it did not help the Great Depression up until 1940. Unemployment rate was still 19% until 1943.
It's a pretty high rate. Why do you think that's significant?
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Can you like?
Why do you think a high rate of unemployment? Why do you think that's something noteworthy? Why is that important?
That because it still tells you that like even though Roosevelt was trying to help, there was still people without jobs and unemployment, and there was like even though he was doing a good cause, there's other people like in the back still didn't have any jobs. I'm saying.
Yes, yeah, I agree with Izzy. It quotes here that Roosevelt Roosevelt did not envision the New Deal as a program to foster economic growth. His short-range goals were the alleviation of the plight of the unemployment and the reform of a flat economic structure. So he was mainly trying to get unemployed people employed so that way they actually had a job instead of work on the economic growth. But it kind of screwed up both of them.
Yeah, I agree with Rose too. Like, I agree with Rose and all that. But to me, I mostly think that it was a failure because it ended in 1943 and it needed World War II to boost it to end it. And so I believe it was mostly a failure more than helping. It was helping him, but not as much as he would have thought.
I agree with William's earlier claim, and another reason why it such has helped us as much as hurt us is because they did a whole bunch of good stuff, is like put resolutions on farm production, constructed dams along Tennessee River. They provided employment for 3 million uninformed young men and young women and things like that. But also in the case of doing this, like building the dams along the Tennessee River and employing all these people, that costs money and stuff. They put the U.S. in a whole bunch of debt, and now there's a whole bunch of problems, and we're worrying about even we're still in debt today, and those problems back then even hurt us now, and we're still worrying we're not gonna pay all that money back. We're not, and so the New Deal it helped us and provided us with a whole bunch of stuff, but it kind of put us in a jam in the same way.
And the rich people felt like Roosevelt was kind of going against them in a way too. So Roosevelt was trying to help the poor, but he was also he was worrying too much about trying to help that he would affect the rich. That the rich would have to pay for higher taxes and they felt like they weren't helping them in a way, and it affected them in a way too by getting all their money and not.
Have you heard that recently also? Giselle brings up a point about the wealthier class paying higher taxes. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Is that still an issue?
Yeah.
But they're rich, so they should.
They have some to spare.
Yeah.
All right, almost everyone has spoken. We've got a couple people left, so we're gonna move on to question number 3. I want you to look at question number 3 right now.
Oh, I like this question.
So if you really like this question, maybe you wanna write down some fish food, some ideas. Maybe you want to be a flying fish. Maybe you got something that you have to say. So think about it. So which programs or events had the greatest impact? So this is where you get to go and really think about those boxes. Which ones really altered and changed society? Think about it. Think about it. I'll give you a minute to finalize your answers. So if you need those dilemma sheets, look at your highlights, look at your marginalia that you did on those dilemma sheets.
I'm gonna tag you.
Sondergaard, I see you got some fish food. Do you know who you're gonna give that to later? Okay. But I'm gonna give it to someone. Edwin, you got everything you need?
Yeah.
Okay. Anthony, good to go?
Yeah.
All right. William Rose, I'm gonna be tapping you really shortly. Okay?
All right, I'd like to start this topic off with the program that I mentioned earlier, the Insurance Corporation and the Security Exchange Commission was one really good succession to the New Deal. It's because it's one of those programs that we still have today. Like, we still are guaranteed $150,000 of savings and our bank accounts and stuff. Like, if they get robbed, we'll still get our $150,000 guaranteed savings. So, like, it's still going on today. It's something that happened, like, succeeded well.
So you like banking security, huh?
Yeah. Well,
So do I.
I agree with what you say, but I thought the program that had the greatest impact was the Work Progress Administration, because it gave work to unemployed people, and it further advanced the country basically by building public buildings and highways to transport things faster. The Work Progress Administration.
I want to agree with you too, because it helps too, but I feel like the CCC program, which stands for the Civilian Conservation Corps, helped too, because 2.5 million men went to work thanks to President Roosevelt, and young men worked and they rebuilt like the railroads and everything, and I felt like that it gave more work to people and more money.
Yeah. They were younger, so they
I would like to disagree with you, because later on the CCC was shut down because it depended too much on emergency money, and if it would have worked, it would like still be here today.
I notice how all of you are just like picking one specific one, and I think it's more like the ones that worked the most were the ones that would like help out all of America and not just a certain clique or a certain, you know, such as the farmers, the unemployed. So like, for example, Social Security and the Securities and Exchange Commission, and then also the bank holiday, also known as the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or the Homeowners Loan Corporation. They all helped out America, and they're still in effect, so they obviously helped.
I agree with Edwin. But one, the Social Security Act, yeah, it still is in effect. And also, when people in your family died, you were given a lump sum, one, to help pay and take care of you and your family, and also if you had children and things like that, it was really hard to take care of them during those times. So I agree with Edwin. Also, even though some of you guys said that the PWA and the WPA's Act, they weren't like very helpful for the New Deal, it was actually very helpful because, for one, it was a short-term solution. So it wasn't in the long run going to help people at all, but it did give like a lot of people jobs, and it gave them hope. And then also the Tennessee Valley Authority in 1933 was also very successful for us because, for one, it gave us better ways for transportation, and it also conserved soil and things like that. So we also ended up with conservation. So we were able to go and produce more, and then it also helped farmers as well because then they were able to plant more and they were able to make a living.
And also, we see like the government actually doing something for America and actually putting effort into fixing issues, so we can't really complain about them wanting to help. So I mean, yeah, it didn't work out as planned, but trying.
Yeah, it really didn't go as smooth as everyone planned. And for one, people in the upper class felt that Roosevelt wasn't very up to here with them anymore since he was trying to help the people. So it was also running his social life in the rich people's world. But then also when you come to think about it, the TVA, that when it helped with the whole conservation thing and everything, it was actually saving the rich people money, so they weren't having to go and spend their money and things like that. They were actually able to save money, and then the people who were actually work poor were able to get more money out of it. So it was helping people on both sides.
Hey, Jason. You look sharp today. What is your ideas?
My ideas?
Yeah.
Like the FDIC, yeah, we talked about that.
All right. So we explored the FDIC. What else? If that was your first favorite, what's your second favorite?
The WPA.
You guys, a lot of you guys like this WPA.
Well, it actually does help a lot of people, even though it may be temporary. It actually provided people with food, money to get food for their families. You know, it may be temporary, but they still have to go and eat hungry.
I agree with what Nathan has to say. It, also, as well as what Kira said, they are very short-term solutions, showing that they weren't really concerned of what was going to happen in the long run. They just knew that there was a problem now, and the problem now needed to be fixed now. So with the WPA, if you really look at it, it focuses on fixing the problem now. And as long as the people who had the problem was happy, it didn't matter. Even though the rich people were getting upset, as Kira stated before, there was things that Roosevelt did to make sure that he stayed in good standings with the wealthy as well. Like she said, with the Tennessee Valley Authority Act, in 1933. So Roosevelt made sure it was a win-win for everyone, even though it didn't look like it.
I don't necessarily think they were thinking about the long run, because I mean, it was America. And also, they were just doing what was more convenient for them at the time. Not necessarily just, here, do this.
I agree with all of you guys that they weren't really thinking about the long run. And also, like Israel said, it took World War II for us to get out of this Great Depression. And you really think about it, we haven't had a depression that bad until our time today, for one, when you come to think about it. So all of these things, yeah, they were all good things and stuff like that. But again, they weren't long term. They weren't supposed to help fix the depression and get us out of it. They were just supposed to help fix a little bit of the economy, even though it wasn't doing much for us. It did a little bit for us. And just like it says on, well, I don't know which one you guys have.
What's the title of it?
A New Transition in 1920, 1939. It says, rather than nationalizing the economy like many of his European counterparts, Roosevelt used his executive power to bring national labor union leaders together with national business leaders. This arrangement allowed labor and management to work out their differences and streamline production while allowing the government to serve as a market negotiator. Roosevelt's balance sheet clearly shows a president eager to leave the nation with a healthy, independently operated banking and investment system run primarily by the private sector, and this is what he achieved, which he did. When you really come to think about it, all of our banking systems, they really didn't crash until about, 1920, and we are way past 1920, I think. So, they crashed during then, and we're, in the 1930s and stuff like that. But
hold on, Ms. Doherty, I've got to interrupt you for a second. Leslie, what are you thinking? I see that you're going through things, and you're looking. So what's your opinion over there?
My opinion.
I know you have a lot of them.
No. I think the reason why we're choosing the WPA Act, sure it was short term. I think we chose it just because it helped a lot of unemployment and people. And then again, there's the PWA Act, which also helped, but it mostly helped during the what is it? those working people. What are they called? Construction workers. They mostly help construction workers, not really the people. Like, to be honest, those two acts were like mostly about building large scale things or like building new roads and new buildings and systems and all that. So I don't really think it was that big of a deal. Like, it mostly helped just the construction workers.
But
in my opinion.
They made up all these projects to give jobs, like to provide jobs.
But you have to consider how short term it was.
But they were jobs.
I agree
with that.
And I agree a little bit with Leslie because these were short-term things and stuff like that, so it wasn't like the jobs were forever. But when you come to think about it, when they did go and build all of these buildings and stuff like that, for one, it did help give other people jobs, and it also gave other people shelters when they didn't have homes and stuff like that. So you also have to look at it that it's not only helping the construction workers because they're getting jobs, but it's actually helping like education. They built schools, so there's education right there. New banks, like you don't have to go bankrupt anymore because you like crash and everything. And it also helps build homes.
Okay, Mr. Hardy. All right, you were given some fish food earlier.
Yeah.
Tell me what, I've been curious what this fish food says.
It goes referring back to what everyone said about the programs which helped. One was Social Security, because it is still used today to finance the people who need federal assistance.
Okay. All right, so we are going to wrap it up right here. Any other final words? Anything else to dazzle your grade with when I enter them into the computer?
Ms. Roberts is the most amazing teacher ever.
Titus, that's not going to dazzle your grade, sweetheart. And it's not going to dazzle me, although I appreciate it. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to close our discussion. We talked about 3 different topics. We talked about the programs that you feel affected the Great Depression the most. We talked about the failures of New Deal programs, and we talked about the successes of the New Deal in pulling America out of the Great Depression. A lot of you guys mentioned World War II being the final thing to pull us out. A lot of you guys mentioned the difference between short-term and long-term things or programs that were created during the New Deal. These are all things that you need to keep in mind because it's your favorite time of discussion. It's the time where we put our thoughts down on paper. Yay! I know, you're so thankful. Okay, so what I want you guys to do right now is I want you to think about using your fishbowl note taker. Take out your note taker. It's the one with the little fishbowl on the bottom.